Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Yep, we've all witnessed the greatness that this game has to offer. Me personally, this game has a very special place in my heart because I remember clearly in the year 2006 when my brother and I finally convinced our parents to buy us the PS2. Granted, it was the worst version of the PS2, being the PS2 Slim, in my opinion. I will never forget the day that my neighbor came over and lent us Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. It was the first Grand Theft Auto game that we've ever played. Granted, we didn't play the story mode. My brother was more interested in exploring the world that this game had to offer. Mainly the strip clubs. I mean, there was something about polygons at that time that was piquing his interest. I don't know, honestly. But it was such a fun experience that I will never forget. I would love to talk about the story of this game, but already there's been a million videos on YouTube explaining the story, including a million more videos of gameplay walkthroughs and finding Easter eggs and so much more. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about San Andreas Stories. We've both heard of Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories, but whatever happened to San Andreas Stories? It's a game many of us have been talking about for years. What would the game be like? How would the story be told? Would it be played on the PSP? And will it work on the PSP itself? Welcome everyone to my channel. And today we'll be diving into a few ideas that I've created on how I think Grand Theft Auto San Andreas would have been made. Or how I would have made Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. I must warn you that this video is entirely speculative and it's based on my ideas on how I would have actually made the game if I was able to. This is just a video of how many ideas I've had in the past few years of what I wanted the game to be. Anyway, pardon the amateur quality of this video. I really wasn't really bothered into editing this video. So anyway, enjoy and yeah. Yep. I would have created 3 chapters, all taking place before the main game, of course, like both Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories. But instead of it taking place in one map, the stories will take place in their own respective part of the map. You know, like for example, Story 1 will obviously take place in Los Santos and Red County. Story 2 would take place in Flint County and San Fierro, with San Fierro's map ending at Bayside Marina just to include Gant Bridge. And Story 3 would take place in Tierra Robada, Bowen County, and lastly Las Venturas. Bridges and roads to be closed off: Bayside Tunnel, Garver Bridge, Kincaid Bridge, Martin Bridge, Fallow Bridge, the Maco Span, Frederick Bridge, Flint Intersection, and the road connecting the Panopticon and Easter Bay Chemicals. The reason why these bridges and roads will be closed is because due to the in-game law of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas and the event of an earthquake. Railway lines connecting each city will also be closed due to these factors, but will still function within the city. The year in which these stories will take place would be a tough one and would be up to anyone's imagination. Seeing that Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories takes place 2 years before Vice City and Liberty City Stories takes place 3 years before Grand Theft Auto 3, I would play San Andreas Stories in the year 1988, 4 years before the San Andreas story that we all know of. Now for the stories. I won't go into detail on what the stories would be, but I'll just, give you an idea of what I think the story would be. I'll let you guys decide on that. Chapter 1 will probably go about the same way like the San Andreas story mod that was released for Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, which was created by Sasquatch, which a demo is already released. But instead of playing as Jose, you take control of a young Caesar and witness his rise to becoming the leader of the Varios Los Aztecas. There will be a few returning characters like Sweet, Big Smoke, Ryder, Kendall, Officer Tenpenny, and many more. But I was also thinking of including CJ's other brother, Brian, in the beginning of the prologue of chapter 1 story. But I'm not sure how that would work. It would be a good idea to include this character in the story because we don't know much about him apart from him being dead. So, yeah. In the end, ultimately, Caesar will meet Kendall, and the rest of the story will just lead up to the prologue to San Andreas that was released before the game. Okay, chapter 2 will be a bit tricky to think about because I have created a few stories, and chapter 2 is based in San Fierro, which will be the biggest map of all 3 stories. So I feel like that story deserves a much more grander story. But I did come up with 3 more, and I will talk about that later on. So let's just skip to chapter 3, which will be in Las Venturas. So in my opinion, I would like the story to be similar to Martin Scorsese's Casino, where your character will be sent to Las Venturas by some mob family based in either Liberty City, Casa City, or whatever city Bullworth is based in, to take over the casino business. You will of course encounter Salvatore Leone, Paulie Sandarco, and many other mob-related casino owners. It will be a double-cross storyline where the main character will be framed by a friend of his, where an important figure in the city of Las Venturas has been killed, which forces our character to go into hiding in the desert. This is a long story where the main character fights his way to the top and eventually meets the family that abandoned him and the friend that tarnished his reputation and put his life on the line. And now, chapter 2. This was a tricky one to think of. It could be another Rising of the Ranks story, but this time in the Woodsy Moo Mountain Club Boys triad, which would have introduced the franchise's first Asian main protagonist. Yes, I know Chinatown Wars exists, but in the case that this came out before that. Anyway, it'll be a story of a lost boy who witnesses the murder of a guardian by another gang, and makes it his aim to kill the man who was responsible for this painful event in his life. Now, after reading this, I just realized it sounds something similar to the Godfather game that was released a few years back. Many years back. A few years back. Anyway. Story 2, it could also be a story of a not-so-clean cop who was just released off his duties and just finished his sentence at a prison due to the findings of him breaking multiple laws such as torture, money laundering, kidnapping, tampering with evidence, and so on and so forth. He eventually works his way to become a PI who unveils a much darker side to San Fierro's police departments and will stop at nothing to bring his former employees to justice. Well, his form of justice. He will work with multiple gangs by helping them and earning their trust in return to gather information. I've thought a lot about the character and was thinking that the character could be based on a mixture of both Vic Mackey from The Shield, which is a great show, by the way. I think you guys should watch it. If you're a fan of FX and if you're a fan of Justified, FX and Justified will no longer exist if it weren't for The Shield. I'm just saying. If you have time, watch it. And it'd be a mixture of both Vic Mackey and Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Speaking of those characters, Jonathan Banks or Michael Chiklis could have voiced main characters in the story, which would have been quite something. And the third story, well, I didn't think much of it because I know many people of you will get angry by the fact of what I'm about to say next. And to be quite honest, I don't feel it sounds like a Grand Theft Auto story. It feels like it belongs in its own version or its own game. But anyway, it could be a story on a badass female character, which will be a massive revenge story like Kill Bill. I haven't had much time to think about it, but maybe you can come up with something or a better story for this character. Mechanics and features of the game. One thing I noticed about Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories is that it did everything to do things differently compared to what Liberty City Stories had done. For example, Vice City Stories had the ability to fly helicopters. I mean, Liberty City Stories did have it implemented, but ultimately it was removed. But there are still some ways that you can access that feature. Just go on YouTube, I'm pretty sure you'll find them. You couldn't swim in Liberty City Stories, but you can in Vice City Stories, albeit for a short time before you drown. Vice City Stories had the Empire business, and you could eventually claim these properties after performing a mini game where you have to destroy the gang member's vehicle and then eventually kill everyone that was in the building, including the backup, before you can purchase, which will work pretty well. I mean, if you actually, Vice City Stories had included a different way of hand-to-hand combat, like for example the ability to grab and throw NPCs, also ground impact, and as well as breaking their necks. Now for the mechanics and features that I would like to return from these two games and San Andreas, adding the ability to vault and crouch. Oh my god, you have no idea how fucking frustrating both Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories, including Vice City and Grand Theft Auto 3, were, just because you couldn't jump over a fucking wall and take cover. Anyway, gambling. Well, that was that was a feature in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. I wouldn't mind it returning. Swimming did come back in Vice City Stories, but it was limited, of course. But I would like for it to come back, including diving. The Empire business I would like to come back, but also the ability to take over territory, like in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. But I feel that they would only belong in Chapter 1 and 3. The ability to purchase clothes, the ability to purchase properties, the car customization. I would have liked to see that return as well. And also the ability to learn more fighting styles. I just wanted to get this video out so you guys can decide what else you would have liked to see in that game had it been released or had it been thought of as an idea. If the game was thought of being made earlier during the development of Liberty City Stories, it would obviously release on the PSP. Many people think that the map might be too big for the PSP and the UMD to handle. While I do agree with this, I still think it's possible. That's the reason why I split this map up into 3. So we could use what the PS1 always did when space was a problem, and use 3 UMDs. Each chapter will have their own UMD, and yes, there will be some modifications to the game itself to make sure that the game even runs on the PSP in the first place. But if the PSP and the UMD was the issue, the next best thing would have to be the PS Vita. And if the game actually released on the PS Vita, I'm certain if this happened back then, the PS Vita would have sold plenty more units, and it would have been regarded as somewhat as a success. And you won't need to separate the games. It'll just be under one cartridge, and you'll be able to choose the chapters, kind of like how episodes on Liberty City is. Rockstar could have used their own Rage engine for this release if they wanted to, giving us a new taste of the changes on the engine while we were waiting for GTA 5 at the time. But ultimately, in the end, it didn't. And all we can do now is dream what if. Or if there are some modders out there watching this, you know exactly what to do. Yeah, and that is how I would have made Grand Theft Auto San Andreas Stories. I know it's not much. Clearly I haven't done a lot of thinking about it, but it's just, an idea in the first place. That's what I would have loved to see if the game was made in the first place. It's unfortunate that the story didn't even actually come out, but it would have been nice to experience what Rockstar would have done. A few of the storylines that I've created might not sound like a Grand Theft Auto story. I've said that about the female protagonist story. It feels like Rockstar Games will make that game a different, will make that into a totally different game. So yeah, I just wanted to make this video because I just had this idea for so long in my mind, seeing that I can't even, seeing that I don't even know how to code and shit and make the game myself, and getting extremely frustrated that nothing about Grand Theft Auto 6 has been mentioned apart from the first trailer. And by the time you see this video, maybe the trailer 2 comes out. That's just pure copium at this point. Yeah, I just wanted to make this video. It was an idea, and I wanted you guys to let me know what you think of it, you know, because I don't have anyone to tell me if it was a brilliant idea or not. So you guys are gonna comment, let me know what you think about it. It's pretty clear that they didn't think hard about it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Now, if you can all excuse me, I need to jump off the second floor of my house. Till we meet again. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Good night. Or good morning or evening, wherever it is you're from. Yeah, okay, bye.